New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what time you're watching this, but if you are watching live, it is 9 a.m. Mountain Time, and my name is Tracy Brown, and I am so happy to be with you today on the Saturday morning Science of Mind conversation series. It feels like I haven't been here in a year. It has been quite a while. But I'm here today and I'm excited that the topic today is chapter 13 from the Science of Mind textbook, Causes and Conditions. We're going to be talking about causes and conditions and what that means and how you can play with that. But before we dive in, I do want to encourage you, if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn, that you jump in the comments or the chat and say good morning, just as Shay has done. And Wayne is with us this morning because this definitely our time is white light practice. I love that idea that we are bringing the white light, the pure light, the powerful light into our lives by studying science of mind. And Anita is with us this morning as well. And I can see there are some other people out there as I'm looking at the numbers. But you do not have to put your name or where you're watching in the chat. I'm just glad to know you are. Thanks, Liz, for joining in. Good morning to you as well. Ooh, there is so much to talk about today. So, as I mentioned, we are focused on chapter 13, Causes and Conditions. And you, if you've been following along, then you already know that we've been building up to this. And in fact, one thing I always try to do when we have when we start a new chapter, but then especially now, like today, where we're starting a new section as well, I always like to give a little bit of an intro or remind us where we've been. So one of the things that is important as we begin this new section is that we just finished an entire section, multiple chapters, that was focused on spiritual mind healing from a different perspective. So the way that Ernest Holmes organized the book, right, there are the introductory chapters, chapters 1 through 4, the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, how to use it. And that really summarizes all of what is happening with science of mind, right? And then part 2, or part 1, that's the introduction. And then in part 1, Ernest Holmes really focuses on the nature of God. Like, what is God? He calls it the nature of being, but what is it that we believe about God? What is it that we believe about God and the human experience? Like, how does that interplay? How are they interwoven? And then in part 2, which we just finished up, I think it starts with chapter 8, but part 2 is spiritual mind healing, first division. Like, spiritual mind healing, what is it about? In fact, he says first division, ideation. What's the idea of it? What's the recognition? How do we recognize the power spiritual mind treatment? And that section is all about, thoughts are things, and how our thought works, and how we can understand the purpose behind spiritual mind treatment or mental treatment or mental healing. So now we go into part 3 beginning today. And part 3 is spiritual mind healing, the second division, practice. Practice. It is all about our time to practice spiritual mind healing. And on the summary page for the chapter, this is a quote. This section is about determining destiny. This section is about the technique by which we lay hold of mind power and prove its practicality. So I hope you're ready to dive into that, because Ernest Holmes has brought us through this process to this point where at chapter 13, we are ready to prove what we believe and how it works. So I don't know. You might need to buckle up, or you might just be like, okay, come on, I'm ready. See, Shay, right there, right? Girl, I am ready, right? Let's do this, right? And it's like more, I wouldn't say woo-woo, Wayne. I would say like more power, more energy, more woo, let's go. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to dive in to part 3 with this chapter. The first chapter in part 3 is chapter 13, Causes and Conditions. And it really is about how to consciously direct our thoughts for desired outcomes, for what we want to experience in life. And it's not a super long chapter. right? It's from page 183 to page 189. So, it's only, quote unquote, only 6 pages, but it is so juicy, delicious. So today, I realized there was so much in this chapter that was important to recall and to share and to dive into a little bit. I may not share as many stories because I really want you to get the some of the quotes from this chapter, and I really want you to think about, with each quotation, have you experienced that? Do you understand it? Do you have questions about it? Because that's what will turn this into a conversation. So as we, go through, if you have an example you want to share, put it in the chat, or let me share an example in the chat, and and then we can highlight what you've added. And if you have any questions, then as we go through, it doesn't make sense, absolutely, please put those in the chat and I will speak to them. But other than that, I think we're ready to dive in. So, I'm thinking about what is a good way. What's a good way? Well, here's a good way. Here's a way that I thought about. This slide is just summarizing what I said, that we're coming from part 2, and now we're entering part 3. And the first part of part 3 is causes and conditions. And we really have to rely upon, or remember that we can rely upon first cause as the source to create a new condition, to change whatever is going on, to have more of that, or to create something new. So if we look at the entire chapter, these are the subheadings, the subheadings in these 6 pages. So it's only 6 pages, but it's 2, 4, 6, 8 different sub chapters or subtitles in the chapter. Mental practice deals only with thought, changeless reality, the perfect universe, turn entirely from condition, look only at what you want, never limit your view of life, place no limit on principle, and God never compromises. If you already know all of this, or if you've read the Science of Mind textbook a few times, then you are already putting together some ideas like, look only at what you want, right? Say what you want, focus on what you want, not what you don't want. Or place no limit on principle. You may be hearing in your mind, principle has no precedent, or principle is not bound by precedent. That's not in this chapter, by the way, but when we begin to learn and take in Science of Mind, right, we pick up quotes from different aspects of the book, because Ernest Holmes repeats himself over and over to really help us get the point. And so these are the 8 subheads in this chapter. Let's dive into each one of them. And I pulled out 1 to 3 quotes from each section in order to just give you the highlights that will allow you to go like, oh yeah, I need to go and pick up my own copy of the book and read that section. And Linda, you are so correct. Ernest Holmes knows how to pack a whole lot in a few pages, and so much for us to think about and so much for us to use. So let's dive in. This first subsection is Mental practice deals only with thought. Mental practice deals only with thought. And what does that mean? It's like, oh, well, wait, what's going on in my life is happening, right? So if I'm going to do a mental treatment, I need to treat what's happening in my life right now. Like a month or so ago, I need to treat the surgical, 2 months ago, I need to treat the pain in my foot, right? I need to treat the pain in my foot, right? No, I need to think about this pain in my foot because that's what I'm trying to heal. And no, mental practice deals only with the thought. What am I thinking about the pain in my foot? What am I thinking about the surgeon when I'm thinking, yeah, I think he botched this procedure? What am I thinking about how long it's going to take for my foot to heal? What am I thinking? So mental practice deals only with thought. And if it does begin, this section begins on page 183. And I am pulling this quote because it is so important. This system of treatment, spiritual mind treatment or mental treatment, this system of treatment is for the purpose of uncovering and neutralizing the wrong states of thought. Repeating, this system of treatment is for the purpose of uncovering and neutralizing the wrong states of thought. And the thing to remember about that is that we will think what we think at first, right? Kind of on automatic. So I was thinking about my foot hurts, or my foot still hurts. Even though I had this procedure on it 2 weeks ago, my foot still hurts. And if I want to use mental treatment to speed the healing, then the fact that I'm thinking about and focusing on my foot hurting is the wrong state of thought. Because thoughts are things. I mean, we can go back to previous chapters. Thoughts are things. And if I keep thinking about how much my foot hurts, my foot's going to continue to hurt. Now, don't be confused. When we are talking about shifting our thoughts, we are not talking about denying the condition. We are talking about denying the power of the condition to define what happens next. Repeating, when we are talking about shifting our thoughts, we are not talking about denying that the condition exists. My foot does hurt, or did a month ago, right? And we're talking about denying that the current condition must continue, or the current condition is the way it's supposed to be. So we deny that the power of the current condition to define the future. And there's a very big difference in those two things. So we don't pretend that the foot doesn't hurt. We go, oh, the foot hurts. My foot really hurts. And then I use this system of mental treatment to uncover the wrong state. My foot hurts, the wrong thing to focus on. Neutralize the wrong thing to focus on. My foot hurts. Oh my foot hurts. And now I'm going to choose to think about, what does it look like, feel like when my body returns to the wholeness that it has been designed to experience. And I begin to use my thoughts in the way of influencing, intending, and instilling the new thought. So this system of treatment that we know as mental treatment or spiritual mind treatment is all about it begins with the idea of, sure, I'm going to uncover and neutralize the wrong states of thought, because spiritual mind treatment does not concern itself with unpleasant conditions nor with imperfect manifestations. Page 183, near the bottom. First sentence in the last paragraph on page 183. Spiritual treatment does not concern itself with unpleasant conditions nor with imperfect manifestations. Now, this is really critical, right? This chapter 13, causes and conditions, is about choosing a new cause so that we can change conditions. And treatment is not about changing God, changing the universe, changing spirit, or controlling it to make it create something different. Although we are, because if we understand how everything works way back in the introductory chapters, right? Then we do understand that what we think about is placing an order with the universe. And in that sense, you might think of it as I'm controlling what the universe delivers. But even then, we're not controlling it because we don't know how it makes things come together. We just see the result. So Ernest Holmes reminds us that treatment is for the purpose of inducing an interior awareness about what it means to heal, what it means to have a different experience, what it means to align with perfection. And so this first subsection in the chapter on causes and conditions really focuses on this mental practice deals only with thought. We are committing to manage and direct our thoughts. And again, remember, section 2 was about understanding what treatment is, the purpose of it, how we use our thoughts, etc. But now we're in section 3 with chapter 13, where we are learning to use, learning to practice, learning to apply our thoughts in a way that generates the result that we want. So the next section, subsection in chapter 13, begins on page 184. And it is about changeless reality. The changeless reality and what that means. And this is a really short subsection. It doesn't even take up the full page, but there are several very powerful quotes in this section. And one of them is this one. Spirit is never bound by the form it takes and is not affected by any apparent cause or condition. It is forever free. Spirit is not bound by the form it takes and is not affected by any apparent cause or condition. So we've got to remember that spirit is unlimited, has no limits. We have to remember that. And that whatever form it takes, spirit is more than just that form. So I am one person and I've been created by spirit, and in a unique way. And each one of you has been created by Spirit in a unique combination in a unique way. But Spirit is not limited by my thoughts, my actions, my beliefs, and Spirit is not affected by anything that I choose or that I do. So when I am grounding myself or preparing to practice mental treatment, I have to remember that the limitations I am thinking about, I own them, and Spirit is not limited by them. So I love Shay's question. What if there is a repressed emotion or something subconscious or unconscious that's lurking around and being stored in Tracy's foot? How is this not spiritually bypassing if we are correcting thought? I love this question because on the one level, it's really simple, and on the other level, it's very complex. So if I am focusing and using my foot, as we may end up doing this whole time together, because it's a tangible, real, real in the physical example. So I don't deny that my foot is hurting, right? So I'm not bypassing that, oh, everything is fine and God is perfect and my foot is perfectly healed. I'm not bypassing it because what I did in the beginning was I actually used that to recognize, oh, I want something different. And I am choosing to engage or to co-create with Spirit a healed foot. So when I am doing mental treatment, I am claiming that what is true in Spirit must be expressed in my life. So even though in treatment, for those of you who are hanging in, and I know this is true for Shay, and I'm responding to Shay's question, so I'm gonna say it this way. So when we're doing treatment and we're in the third step of treatment and we are claiming what we want and we say it in the first person, this, or in the present tense, in the present tense, we are describing what we know must be true in the absolute, in God's mind. And we're describing because I know what that's true in God's mind, in the mind of the universe, in the mind of Spirit, because I know it's true there. This is what that feels like. This is what this looks like. Oh, I go skating and my skates fit perfectly and my foot is flexible and strong, right? So I'm describing that which is the result. I am not describing what's now. Now I'm going to go back to the first part of the question. What if there's a repressed emotion or something subconscious or unconscious that is, or that has resulted in the pain in my foot? I am not dealing with that when I am doing mental treatment because I am not excavating the past or really the current either. I am planting the future. I am not excavating the past. I am planting what will cause the future. And because I am planting that through the alignment with the absolute, with God, with Spirit, with the one, because I am planting it in alignment with that, anything that's out of alignment must dissolve, disintegrate, be obliterated, because otherwise I would still be out of alignment. This does not mean that this doesn't mean that there are never any times where we might really want to dive into excavating what's there. So but I wouldn't be using spiritual mind treatment to do that, if that makes sense. So if I have a pattern and I have done treatment, or maybe I haven't even done treatment, and I am simply noticing something and I want to understand it more, and I'm noticing a pattern, and maybe it's something I haven't been able to break, then I might want to excavate what's in my subconscious. What's going on? Is there something energetically that is at play here that I'm not seeing? And I don't even know how to tap into what it is I want to break or what it is I want to create. And there are lots of modalities for that, right? So it could be psychology and I go see a therapist. It could be hypnotherapy. It could be energy work. It could be Reiki. I can use other modalities, but in Science of Mind in general, and in this chapter specifically, Ernest Holmes is talking about when you choose to use the modality of spiritual mind treatment, this is what's happening. And I want to say hey and hello to Carl. And since Carl says that they are in Chicago, I can say, yes, I can still say good morning. So welcome, welcome. And yeah, Shay, that's so helpful. No one has ever explained it to me that way. Yeah, I and I appreciate that feedback. Thank you. I think we forget our brains are trained in the society that we live in. Our brains are trained to think in a binary fashion, one thing or the other thing, yes or no, right or wrong. You use this, not this. And instead, what's important is for us to really remember that we have many tools in our toolkit, and we should use the right tool at the right time. So if I'm using spiritual mind treatment, then I am doing this, right? And I am remembering this quote: spirit is never bound by the form it takes. So anything I am thinking or anything I've done up until now cannot limit God, because God is like, this is not what we teach. But if we thought of God as a big person, right, as a superhuman being, I imagine that God would say, oh, Tracy, you're over here worrying about your foot. Like, okay, whatever. You worry about whatever you worry about. I got other things to think about. I'm thinking about love and joy and harmony and wholeness. And whenever you're ready to think about those things, like, do a treatment and bring me in and we'll do this together. So the unconscious, emotional pieces, they're planted there and they do affect our lives. But when I go to treatment, spirit doesn't have any of that in its consciousness. And that's the consciousness that I'm tapping into and aligning with. In the next subsection in this chapter, it's titled The Perfect Universe. And this just goes on to remind us that a perfect cause absolutely, unequivocally must produce a perfect effect or result. So if I am aligning with God, the perfect cause, if I am aligning the cause or the direction with that which knows everything, knows what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why, then the result or the effect must also be perfect. So in this subsection, Ernest Holmes reminds us again and again and again how we must think about the perfect cause in order to get the perfect result. And yes, Linda, no coincidence, right? In today's daily guide, the first quote applies here. You must learn a new way to think before you can master a new way to be, which is quoting Marianne Williamson. I love the synchronicity of that. And so mental treatment is learning a new way to think or choosing a new way to think about whatever is going on. And Ernest Holmes continues with, we cannot afford to believe in imperfection. To do so is to doubt God. If we believe in imperfection, we are believing in a power apart from God, which means we're believing in another creator. And so there are other places in the textbook where Ernest Holmes goes more deeply into, right? There's one power, there's only one power in the universe, right? And so if you grew up like I did in a religious system that said you're always being pulled between God and the devil, or good and evil, that those systems are saying evil is an equal power and you have to choose which one. And in Science of Mind, we believe there's only one power, the good. The choices we make are either in alignment with that or not, but it's not because there's some equal power that is controlling us or that is pulling us away. And so we cannot afford, in mental treatment, we cannot afford to believe in imperfection, because if we do, we are basically saying that we doubt that God has the power to change our lives or to change what we are experiencing. And in this same, on this same page, on page 185, he goes from this quote, and let's see if I can see it really quickly. Bum, 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 bum. He writes, it would help if I was looking at the correct page. He writes, perfect God within me. He writes, let us say daily to ourselves, perfect God within me, perfect life within me, which is God, come forth into expression through me as that which I am. Lead me ever into the paths of perfection and cause me to see only the good. And it's the reminder to ourselves of what we actually are believing in and where we are placing our trust. Then he goes right into the next subsection, which is one of my favorite subsections in the entire book, turn entirely from the condition. And I remember when I first read, was reading and learning Science of Mind, I remember it was like, just being hit right between the eyes with like make it plain, right? Oh, there are a lot of words in this book, but if I would simply train myself to turn away from the condition, and then the section after this, look only at what you want. If I could train myself to turn entirely away from the condition and look at or focus on what I want, so almost everything else in this 600 pages will make sense if I practice once I believe in this one power, if I could just practice turning away from the condition and focusing on what I want, it would make a huge difference. So the first sentence in this section, not the first sentence in this section, but at the top of page 186, it says, turn entirely away from the condition. Spiritual treatment starts with perfect God, perfect man, and perfect being. And I have to admit, I don't know that I totally understood that at the beginning, but I totally understood turn away from the condition. I didn't really understand perfect God, perfect man, perfect being, but if you ever are going through professional practitioner training, this gets hammered into you over and over and over, that spiritual mind treatment is based on the assumption that God is perfect and God has created humanity with the ability to be in perfect alignment, and life is a perfect expression, right? Being a human being, or being itself is perfect. So that was hard for me. That took a long time for me to actually go, oh, when I'm doing a treatment, I am believing, I am bringing myself to the belief that perfect God has created perfect person, perfect human, and perfect human is designed to have a perfect experience in the way they be, the way they are in the world. So with my foot, right? If wholeness is the nature of God, then wholeness is my true essential nature, even though in this moment I'm feeling pain in my foot, but I'm not doing a treatment based on the pain in my foot. I'm doing the treatment based on my body has been created to express and experience wholeness. And that means perfect being is that my foot operates perfectly and I'm easily able to walk, or whatever example I want to use of in my life. And Shay, you are exactly correct. Perfect man or perfect human, perfect woman, perfect person does not mean perfect behavior in the way that we think of perfect on the human scale. It would be capital P perfect, because it would be the behavior would be a capital P perfect, because our behavior is the reflection of our beliefs and our choices. And so in that sense, it's perfect because I chose it. And the universe said yes, which then means if I want to have a different outcome, I make a new choice. So perfect man, in the fact that the person has been given, given the opportunity or the ability to make choices in whatever I choose. If I choose to take illegal drugs and whether I consciously choose it or circumstantially choose it, and I'm having that experience in pure theology, it would be perfect. I would be still being perfect as a human being because I made the choice, or I get the opportunity to choose, and then I can choose again. But when we're doing treatment, so Tracy, come back to treatment. When we're doing treatment, we are stating what we want in the context of perfect man, perfect God, perfect man, perfect being. I love this chapter. And now I'm looking at the clock going, oh my goodness, I still have 4 pages to go. So buckle up. Let's dive in. Turn entirely away from the condition. Spiritual treatment starts with perfect God, perfect man, and perfect being. And then we go to this section, look only at what you want, which I've already said is these two sections together are like some of my favorites in the book. Never look at that which you do not wish to experience. And what that means is, and I've already said it, but I'm going to say it again. It doesn't mean that you ignore it or pretend it's not happening. It means that once you recognize that and you go back to the very first quote of, oh, I have uncovered what I don't want. I have uncovered something I want to change. Then, as you are practicing treatment, you do not build the treatment or your thoughts around what you do not wish to experience. You build them around what you want to experience, because it's the consciousness in back of the word that forms the word. So I might say, I want a pain-free foot, but I'm still focusing on pain. My consciousness is still stuck in pain. Ernest Holmes describes consciousness as the inner embodiment of an idea. So what I'm embodying in my mind and in my beliefs is, I've got to work with the pain. I've got to deal with the pain. I've got to fix the pain. I've got to eliminate the pain. Well, if that's innerly what I am embodying, thinking about, holding on to, the pain's going to still be there, so that I have something to fight, all right? Or I'm always working with the pain. So I want my inner embodiment to be about wholeness. Because if I'm experiencing wholeness, the reality is I'm not going to experience that pain. But I don't have to speak to it, because I'm not building around the pain. I'm building around wholeness or wellness or harmony in every cell in every cell in my foot, right? Whatever principle I choose. So this section is really critical. Look only at what you want. And then we go to the section that is titled Never Limit Your View of Life. And never limit your view of life by any past experience. So I'm going to go back to Shay's comment about, well, what if, or question about, well, what if the past experience has deposited an emotion that I've been repressing, or it's subconscious or unconsciously connected to and attached to. Every one of us has a lot of that. All of us, even those of us who do this work, something can happen that all of a sudden, at a subconscious level, that neural pathway has opened, and I'm actually behaving from an old pattern that I didn't consciously choose, but my subconscious chose it and keeps choosing it and keeps choosing it. But because I didn't consciously choose, I'm kind of on automatic, or it's an old behavior. I was in conversation with someone a few days ago, and they were just repeating a habit that had been ingrained in them from growing up, probably even pre-verbal, but definitely from, the age of 5 or 6 or 7. And, I've got to please my mom. I've got to please my parents. I've got to do what they say, and I've got to make them happy so they won't be angry or upset, or right. And so not consciously choosing, but realizing how upsetting it was. Like, I'm a grown person now. I'm a full adult. Why am I doing this behavior? It's not what I want. but there's something, right, that is coming up with the connection based on some stress that's happening and some feeling of insecurity that's attached to that old behavior. So that happens to all of us. And it's one of the reasons why spiritual mind treatment can be so powerful. Because if I don't know that, sometimes, much of the time, I can say, wow, I'm noticing this pattern. I don't know why it's happening, but in spiritual mind treatment, I am going to focus on what I want, not what I don't. I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to live in that. I'm going to breathe. I'm not pretending that the behavior I don't like isn't happening. I just know that I don't have to be limited by this behavior. And we use treatment in order to move through that to something else. And I love that Ernest Holmes wrote this. We have looked at poverty, degradation, and misery, and I could say foot pain, until they have assumed gigantic proportions. Now, if we're going to use treatment, now we must look at harmony, happiness, plenty, prosperity, peace, and right action and wholeness until they appear. We keep replacing what we don't want in our minds and in our consciousness with the new thing. Ernest Holmes says in this section, the way scientifically, science of mind, mental science, the way to work out a problem is to conceive of it as already being an accomplished fact in our experience. We perceive it, we shift our consciousness about it until it actually happens. So if you've worked with these principles of science of mind for any length of time, or if you talk to people who have, then you will recognize that, there are many times we may pick one idea or one principle, and we may work with it for a year. We may work with it for 5 years until we actually experience it. And we may use treatment and have something change in 24 hours. But the principle is what we're focused on. And this chapter 13 is just giving us the basic. And so he ends this, there are 2 more sections. This one, place no limit on principle. And the words which you speak would be just as powerful as the words Jesus spoke if you knew your word was the law. If you knew it intellectually and you believed it with every fiber of your being, then when you speak your word, you would know and you would experience that it would happen just the way that Jesus exemplified for us. And Ernest Holmes closes this chapter with a section titled, God Never Compromises. And there are 2 or 3 quotes in this ending section, but the 2 that I'm going to focus on is this one. The one practicing must be able to look a fact in the face and know that all manifestations are simply effects. So that means they can be changed by changing the mental cause. Sometimes you'll hear me say, Ernest Holmes taught us to look a fact in the face and call it a lie. Not that it's not happening, but that it doesn't have the power to continue when I start a new first cause into motion. So the one practicing, that means you must be able to look a fact in the face and know that all manifestations are effects and can be changed by changing the mental cause. So the happy story about my foot, is that, yeah, when I stopped looking at the pain and I started really doing serious treatment, which I had not been doing. Hate to admit, but someone asked me, "So what have you been treating?" And I was like, "Oh, oh yeah, I could do spiritual mind treatment, couldn't I?" And I've been doing treatment about other things, but my foot would hurt and I would think, oh, my foot's still hurting. And I would just go on about my business. Or I was talking to the person who asked me that question and I had just said something like, my foot is still hurting after 2 weeks. And if it's still hurting, by Monday, I'm going to have to call the doctor and schedule a follow-up appointment because I think he really messed up. And she was like, and what's your treatment been about it? Yeah. The manifestation of the pain in my foot was just an effect, not of the doctor, not necessarily of the doctor messing up. It could be an effect of me thinking about the pain and how long it's going to take to heal. It could be an effect of I did not have an infection, but it could have been an infection beginning to grow. It was swollen. It could be an effect of just after surgery, they're swelling and it's taking longer than I expected for the swelling to go down. I mean, it's an effect, not a cause. And as soon as I changed the mental cause to wholeness, I promise you within 24 hours, it wasn't hurting as much. And within 4 days, there were visible elements of healing on the outer surface where it wasn't healing well. And and within a week, I was like, oh, I don't need to go to the doctor, right? And Linda, thank you. Like, we all need the reminders. It's wonderful to have a friend who asks just the right question at just the right time without it being fussing or guilting or any of that. It was just like a question, right? So this is where Ernest Holmes leaves us in this last section. God never compromises. He says, truth knows no opposites. And when we take away the belief in evil and outward appearance, evil must flee because we focus on the truth. This is this chapter on conditions, causes and conditions, chapter 13 in the Science of Mind textbook. My name is Tracy Brown. Oh, I'm so grateful that you have hung out with me today. I'm always grateful to have the opportunity to one more time look through a section or a chapter in the Science of Mind textbook and to share it with you. I'm really grateful for the comments you've added, and I hope that you will come back next Saturday for chapter 14, which is about physical perfection. And in chapter 14, Ernest Holmes begins to help us match what we know about treatment with our intention to heal physical conditions in our bodies. Thanks so much for being here with Saturday Science of Mind. And also, please just check out New Thought Media Network throughout the week, because there are all kinds of programs in all aspects of New Thought, not just Science of Mind. And maybe I'll see you as someone who is also viewing one of the other shows. I encourage you to dive into this chapter a little bit further, as Shay indicated that she might. And I will see you again soon. Have a good weekend.